Heavenly Creatures is a 1994 release psychological drama directed by Peter Jackson.
Yes, it's a story of actually a real life case of two girls who, end up murdering one of their mothers.
Yeah, so that's spoilers out the window for this one.
It stars Kate Winslet as Juliet.
Juliet Hume.
That's it. Yep. And
Melanie Lynskey.
Not Monica Lewinsky. Melanie Lynskey as Pauline, or one of the various other names they give her in the film. If you watch it, you'll understand what I mean by that. Pauline is a native New Zealander, and Juliet is English and has come over with her parents and has started at the school. And they quickly form a relationship, which turns a little bit too intense for the likings of their parents. I mean, it's through their shared love of literature and art and things like that, and they start writing a book together. And it's quite intense. Due to the disapproval of their parents, they sort of form a hatred of these people that are trying to stop them from being together, and it kind of plays out from there.
Yeah, and in fact, because Juliet Hume, Kate Winslet's character, she suffers with tuberculosis.
Yes,
and the other girl, Pauline Parker. She has something else, something or other.
Something to do with their bones.
Something to do with her bones. She's had something wrong with her leg, and so that kind of the fact that they're both kind of outcasts, and some of the scenes at the beginning of the film show them to be kind of out of. Neither of them play gym.
Yeah, they don't take part in certain things, so that gives them plenty of time to sort of get to know each other.
Yeah, exactly. And it's Peter Jackson. It's our first Peter Jackson film. Mm-hmm. It's also. Well, this is not a Christmas film at all. It's December, and we decided this month we're going to pick a few films that are not Christmas films. A couple of them might be, but this one is not a Christmas film, but this does feature a couple of moments
of Christmas.
Two very, very short. I couldn't actually remember. I was looking on IMDb for films that have Christmas in it, and it said Heavenly Creatures. I thought, I can't remember. But there is. There's two very short scenes, but they're just there to kind of show the passing of time.
Yeah.
And Pauline receives a journal.
Yeah, actually, she writes, everything about her relationship with Juliet and everything that's going on with her family in these diaries, and everything in the script is straight out of the real diaries,
the actual diaries
that she wrote.
Yeah, and she narrates that as the film goes along. So that kind of gives you your narrative of the film. I think that works in its appeal. I mean, obviously, I think there's a lot of times with. These kind of films about real life crimes, murder crimes. Usually they tell them straight.
Yeah,
it's like a straight crime film. Obviously, this is Peter Jackson, and I think he's done it really interestingly. He looks at the relationship of the two girls, and of course they have this fantasy world that they have kind of developed, and he then portrays that, and he's able to, because it's Peter Jackson, and he's really good with fantasy world and horrific imagery and things like that. He's able to then actually put that on screen, and he gets some quite strange moments, and he has a lot of fun with. In fact, he set Weta. So Weta obviously is the famous special effects company that he set up. There's quite a few digital moments in the film. There's a few strange morphing moments which are quite cool, and then the fourth world that they create in their heads. They visualise that with these kind of strange kind of claymation type people and things like that. And so Weta was set up for this. Obviously, Weta is mostly famous for Gollum and Lord of the Rings and things like that. But Weta, this is where it all started. So obviously, Peter Jackson is a great filmmaker. I was turned on to him via watching Bad Taste and then Brain Dead, two amazing films. I never saw Meet the Feebles personally. Did you ever see that one?
No, I haven't. No.
And then Forgotten Silver, which is really good and interesting, actually, with this one, and also what he's done recently. So the beginning of this film opens up with kind of it's like a 1950s travelogue, and you get lots of scenes of how. So it's set in Christchurch in New Zealand, and you see lots of scenes on how. I suppose it's a kind of a juxtaposition into the film, because you see what life was like in the 50s, how people were supposed to behave, how people were dressing, and all that kind of stuff. And then it very quickly cuts into these two girls running away from something, screaming with blood all over them, and obviously that's showing what is to take place at the end of the film. But it's that use of old film that Peter Jackson has done quite a few times. Forgotten Silver is a great film, which I won't talk about because if no one's seen it, you really need to just go and watch it. But it is about old found film. And of course, recently he's just released the documentary "They Shall Not Grow Old," which of course is about the footage in the First World War, which was pretty good. Yeah, I thought it was done really well. So he has this love of old film and footage, and he does make use of it. He has made use of it in his career. This is it's quite different to Brain Dead and Bad Taste. They were both kind of zombie gore fests, and I remember seeing this for the first time. I wasn't quite sure what to expect, and I was blown away by this film the first time I saw it. And I watched it quite a lot when I first, back in whenever 94, 95. I don't know, something about it that just worked for me.
I mean, it was the first film for both of them.
Kate Winslet had done stuff on the TV in this country. Melanie Lynskey, this was her first screen role ever. I think they wanted, they wanted the film to be authentic. They wanted it to be quite, realistic, and they wanted two girls that looked like the two actual girls, and they couldn't find Pauline, and I think they tried loads of girls and they couldn't find, and then suddenly they came across this young girl, Melanie Lynskey, and she was perfect, and she's really good. I think they're both really good. Kate Winslet is a great actress. She's very funny in it. She has some very funny lines, and she's quite amusing. But Melanie Lynskey's really good, and there's a lot of facial movement she makes, and which I was bowled over by her performance in it. So I think she's really, really great. And also, I mean, some of the locations they used were real locations. I think they used the actual location where the murder took place.
Right. Yeah.
And they said that when they went to film there, all the birds stopped singing, and it got really eerie, and so they moved 100 feet up the hill and filmed it somewhere else. Yeah, so obviously, I mean, Save Any Creatures is back at the beginning of his career, but I think it still holds up. I think it's done really well. It looks really good, and then, like I said, there's some of the fantasy stuff, set pieces. You really get this kind of, and I think that's maybe why I liked it, because I've always been, we've spoken before about. So when we talk about fantasy films, obviously we did Princess Bride, controversially recently, that I wasn't a fan of. This is the kind of fantasy I like. So where it is literally
something in
someone's head, yeah, because the character is, missing something, or they go searching for things, and that's the kind of fantasy I like. So when I say rooted in reality, this is kind of what I mean.
Right. Cool.
Yes. So, angsty teenager, you kind of fall for these things, don't you, I suppose?
I guess.
I mean, it's a psychological drama, so there's psychological issues going on, and he has these wonderful set pieces, these kind of crazy claymation figures that kind of come out. And that's also, so what kind of happens, as in a lot of these type murder cases, is, reality becomes, or fantasy becomes reality. And the two are kind of blurred into one another. And then you start seeing, it gets kind of more violent as the film goes on. The fantasy stuff they start believing that the fantasy world is killing off people that they want killed off. And it's all done kind of in their heads, but really effectively. And that's obviously leading up to something much more realistic. And although it stars both Kate Winslet and Melanie Lynskey, it's more Melanie Lynskey's film. I mean, obviously she is the daughter of the mother that is eventually murdered. And it seems to me, I've read a little bit about the actual case. I did read some of the diary entries that she wrote, and they are exactly what is being read on screen. And it's clear that she is maybe that Juliet Hume was more kind of innocent bystander in a way, and that she was led into this by the other girl. And it's clearly the other girl that has kind of taken the lead with everything, and she's the one whose mind is starting to deteriorate. I mean, they're both from quite interesting different backgrounds as well. Yeah. One's from kind of, I suppose, lower middle class New Zealand, and they have to take boarders in to kind of help pay the rent and things like that. And then the English girl is from kind of a more upper class or upper middle class background, and but they've both got parents that they despise, and family breakdown and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, it's obviously, I guess you would call it LGBT these days, wouldn't you?
Yeah, so there is a lesbian kind of undertones in there. I mean, I think in the real case, it was suggested that nothing ever actually happened from that. In this film, you never know. They show a little bit here and there.
Kind of the reason why the parents try to pull them apart.
Well, yes, because so in the 50s, so homosexuality was in this country it was illegal. I'm not sure about I guess it was probably illegal in New Zealand, but it was also considered a mental disorder. It was a mental
they talk about curing them and things
curing
like that,
them and it being a phase and all that kind of stuff. And I think it was a mental disorder was actually it was kind of linked with deviant behaviour and that kind of thing. So you're right, it was it was a sin, apparently, in those days. We are in a very religious time in the 1950s.
Yes.
We're still kind of somewhat connected to the Victorian period and that whole, everyone was repressed and dirty words and all that kind of stuff. You weren't allowed to do anything, and homosexuality was not the thing to do.
It wasn't the swinging 60s yet, was it?
It wasn't at all. No, not at all. But so things like that come up in the film, certainly. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, it never portrays that they're doing anything wrong. Particularly, it's the parents that are sort of intolerant and the ones that who should just be letting them do their thing,
get on with their thing. They're just young kids after all. There's also the mother actually is played by Sarah Pearce, who we've not spoken about before, but she was in The Navigator.
Right, yeah.
That we did a few months ago.
Medieval Odyssey.
A Medieval Odyssey, that's the one. And then also a woman named Elizabeth Moody, who she plays the first teacher that you see in the school, the French teacher, which is quite an amusing scene where Kate Winslet first comes in. You'd know her because she was in Brain Dead. She's the mother in that, with that revolting scene around the table. Do you remember that one?
Vaguely. I haven't seen it for a long
because
time.
she's like one of the undead. And I think there's a scene, they're all like sitting around the table. I think they're eating like custard, and her ear falls off into the custard, and then she eats it back up, and it's just the most. We were doing Evil Dead a few weeks ago, and I mean Evil Dead was gory, but Brain Dead was
nothing on Brain Dead.
Brain Dead was revolting, and I just loved it. I loved that film so much. But yeah, so that's the woman from that, and she plays the teacher at the beginning of this film. And there's a cameo here as well, isn't there?
There is, yeah. Peter Jackson likes to stick himself in his films.
He does.
And, he's just playing some sort of tramp bloke that they run into as they're coming out the cinema.
He is. He does that in Frighteners, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's also he plays like a drunken guy in Lord of the Rings as well.
Yeah, he's not a tramp in Frighteners. He's like a heavy metal. He's got long hair and a leather jacket, isn't he? But he's drunk. He's always
where's it? I don't even remember that.
It's where I think Michael J. Fox comes running out of somewhere and he crashes into him, and similar kind of thing.
They're all sort of blink and you miss them, aren't they?
Yeah, and
particularly Lord of the Rings. It's like dark, and he's like hunched over, and as far as I can remember, you can barely make out that it's him. To be honest.
Right, well, it's him being Hitchcock, basically, isn't it? So obviously, this is it's a famous film. It's still readily available. I have it on DVD. I just have it's an American version of it, and you have.
I've got the British Blu-ray.
The Blu-ray version. They are slightly different.
Yes, there's two cuts. This one's about 95 minutes, and that one's about 109 minutes or something. It's about 10 minutes different, but there's two versions. One of which obviously is longer. Has a couple of extra scenes in it. Nothing that.
No, I mean, so this
amazing.
This is titled the uncut version, which kind of suggests something horrendous was cut from that one. Yeah. It's not the case. It seems to apparently one of the versions has more dream sequences, kind of more dream-like stuff tagged onto it, and also there's quite a poignant moment in this because the mother of Juliet Hume has an affair with someone, and this one features more of that. There's a whole scene that's cut from that one.
Oh, right. Because that does kind of come out of the blue in this, doesn't it?
It does kind of, and there's a whole sequence in this that kind of brings him into the story.
Right.
And you can see that Juliet is not happy with the whole situation. She doesn't believe it's going on at first. There's a funny line, actually, when I think Pauline said he's trying to get into your mother's drawers, isn't he? She's like, no, that's not possible. The only man who's allowed into my mother's drawers is my father. It's a very funny moment. And I think that scene...
that's not in this one.
That's not in that one. Okay, so it's quite a poignant moment because it needs to be. It's part of what is in that one. Yeah. So I don't know why that was cut out. My one has nothing. A trailer. That's it.
This has got some. It's not got a lot. It's got some postcards in there. Gotta love some postcards. It's just got some interviews with some film people, such as Kim Newman, just looking back at the film, talking about it. So not a lot on there. I mean, I think there's an American Blu-ray, which I think has a couple of different features on it, and also features the longer version. Right. I mean, I think this is out of print, I think, so you can get hold of it, but it's not easy and not cheap, particularly. And I think, again, the American one, I think that's out of print as well. So it's, you know, it's you can get it, but you might struggle a little bit to pick it up cheap.
Great.
But there's no version that has both cuts on it. So,
Right.
I mean, I know,
No.
I think at the moment, I mean, he's been saying it for years, I think, but apparently Peter Jackson is remastering Bad Taste and Brain Dead, and I think Meet the Feebles as well. He hasn't made mention of this, so whether when those get released, you know, whoever's got the rights to it at the moment will release it again, don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it'd be nice to maybe have a more complete edition that's got both cuts and a few more features on it.
Yeah,
You know,
that would be nice, yeah.
be nice, but
Yeah.
for the moment,
That's all you
those
can
are
get.
your choices.
So that was Heavenly Creatures, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, let us know in the comments below.
Yep, hit the subscribe button up there if you've enjoyed it, and there's some other video links over there, so check those out. Come and see us on Twitter and Facebook, and come back next week for another video.